So welcome back. I'm Kaleigh Moore.
I'm Krista Dyole.
And today we're going to talk about the owned piece of brand reputation engineering.
Yes.
And so I want to start by talking about what that actually means. What does the owned piece look like? What does that include? Why it's important? So when we talk about owned, this is also sometimes referred to as earned. These are the properties that a brand already owns. So website, blog, anything that you didn't pay for. So like organic press mentions, case studies, landing pages. This is the more traditional SEO landscape, I feel like. These are the properties that a brand has full control over, except for the earned press mentions. But these are traditionally the pieces of the puzzle that they have a little bit more control over. So I think when we think about this in terms of traditional SEO, it's a lot of keywords within blog posts and paid optimizations around landing pages and solving for CRO, so conversion rate optimization. And so I think that this is still such an important and big piece of this puzzle, but it's different now. It's a lot more involved. And so I want to start the conversation by saying, what have you heard about how people are thinking about this, and just what kind of questions are top of mind for you as somebody, you said in the last episode, you've been very community focused and kind of off page. So what are the types of things that you're curious about?
I've been super heads down on the off-page piece of this. And then I always hear this referred to as the on-page piece. I feel like there's several terms
more language,
for all of this.
Yeah.
Yes.
More language.
But yeah, it's very weird for me, who a large chunk of my career has been in content strategy, but that's not as of late what I've been focused on. I don't know anything about this side of things, to be honest with you. I don't know whether or not best practices have changed for creating content. I don't know, I know you mentioned lots of opportunity for content refreshes in the last episode. I just don't know what has changed on the content creation and optimization side of things.
Yeah.
So that's probably my main question is what does that look like now? And is it super different from what it did look like a couple years ago? And then I think, so you mentioned earned PR, which I think is interesting because I think there might be some overlap, because I view that as a part of off page.
Interesting.
So I'm curious to hear how you think that plays into the on page world or the owned world, I guess. So yeah, I think those are my two biggest I want to hear more about those two things.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So I'll start kind of zoomed out, because I think the thing that's most exciting to me, coming from a more traditional SEO background, lots of content marketing, lots of expert roundups, working to just really, I think a good way to think about this is an example. So I'll use the CRM example again. If you're a software company trying to sell your CRM software, then you are probably traditionally, in the past, historically, solving for keywords related to that. So things directly related to your product or service. And what's different about AI search or GEO, whatever you want to call it, is that it's more about the overall landscape of the online environment. And so this is important for PR because GEO is a little bit more load bearing. So the way that we think about how do we solve for search queries, and the way that people are currently asking questions and looking for answers to those questions, is we have to shift away from keywords and get more into topical ownership. And so I think that this is really interesting. And Bernard from ClearScope has talked a lot about this, so hat tip to him. But essentially putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, and again, this is probably how it always should have been, just thinking about the questions that those people have, your target customers, your target personas, and what are the questions they asked? What's the language they use when they're asking those questions? And then what are the very niche sub-questions or subtopics related to that? And so the work that I've been doing, and the strategy piece, and the shift from SEO to GEO, is largely about how do we own our topic across the pieces that we have control over, but also then, again, as we talked about in the last episode, how does that feed into this larger picture? And so I think the shift to topical ownership is very interesting because, number one, it forces people to be more specific. So it's not just a content calendar and you come up with some ideas that you think are good based on keyword volume. It's much more about how do people ask questions and what are the words that they use? And so one of the questions I get about this a lot is, well, how do we know? How do we know? And there are lots of great tools you can use for this. But I think another really organic way to start working on this is if you have testimonials, if you have customer support tickets, if you have forums, you can start reverse engineering and looking for that language and see what are the words people use when they're talking about your company.
People use Reddit for this a lot. If people are already talking about their company there. But yes.
And I think that's very, very smart. And it takes me back to writing landing page copy. So in the old days, when I did some work for Joanna Weeb with Copy Hackers, one of the best tips she ever gave was if you're working on a landing page, you need to go, especially for like a consumer product, you need to go to Amazon and look through the reviews. And what are the phrases that people are using? What are the terms? What's the actual like vernacular of the people who are talking about this topic? How do they talk about it? And then, so when you think about people go to a search engine now and they ask a very specific question about what they're trying to solve for. So we're shifting from this thinking, which is traditional SEO of best software for CRM, to now, what's the best software for a team of 10 that serves this very specific audience and our budget is X? And AI search engines are so good at taking all of those very specific sub-questions and then generating one answer. So again, I feel like it always should have been like this.
And then what I do know is the concept of fan out queries. Where, I'm sure you're going to get there.
Go ahead.
But so that is what you just described, that very specific question will be the initial prompt. But then obviously we know ChatGPT is always like, do you want me to do this for you next? Do you want do you want to know about this next?
Do you want more?
And so then, those queries where then you're going deeper from your initial question, those are called fan out queries, which pulls in more citations and more opportunity to get cited and mentioned. But it's very interesting.
I feel like it's also part of the reputation layer. So again, we're going to get more in the weeds on the off page, but you have all this owned material. You're solving for how do we use the language? How do we answer questions that our audience is asking? I think also there's this layer, though, of you can have all the good content in the world, but you also need to have the reputational layer now of, okay, we also have a G2 review that confirms this is true. We have a person on YouTube who's talking about our product in a tutorial and basically giving the thumbs up that, this is a good tool. I use it. There's a person on Reddit that's in the comments saying, I use X CRM software. I think it's pretty good for this specific use case. And so again, it's getting more strategic and specific about what and who is your product for. And I think this is how it always should have been. And so I'm very curious. I think a lot of brands for a long time have looked at SEO as low-hanging fruit, the owned content, the blog. We just need something for the constant hamster wheel that is content production. We need to have stuff to put out. And now there's just more strategy that goes into it. There's more, how do we own this topic? So again, you talked about the fan out queries. We have somebody who's looking for a CRM for this specific tool. What other sub-questions are they going to have that are part of that purchasing decision? And do we have content that covers those? And so I think it's a really good way for brands to get hyper-specific and to really dig their heels in as thought leaders and experts on this very specific customer base that they solve. I think the future of content is niche.
I mean, it makes sense. And so when I'm thinking about, like, if I were to go back to being like a content manager tomorrow or whatever, and my ownership was blog, things like landing pages, things like FAQ pages, whatever you own specifically. Like how do you think someone in that position should like start to think about those things differently from a like almost like a day-to-day standpoint? Like what would you do if you were going to advise like a content manager or content strategist to like what should be changed right now
Yeah.
in terms of blog?
It's kind of a heavy lift. So
Yeah.
there are many prongs that are solving for the answer to that question. Number one is, what content do we already have?
Mhm.
Can we update it or repurpose it in some way? Because that's the lowest lift.
Yeah.
But then there's also the deep research that needs to be done on what is already surfacing within the AI summaries. What opportunities do we have there? So are there things that are already kind of organically being surfaced within those results?
Mhm.
And then where are the gaps within that assessment? So what
Yeah.
opportunities still exist? What's the we've talked about CRM for 10-person teams that have this budget, but have we talked about kind of the side use cases for people who
Yeah.
are also part of our customer persona? Have we talked about very specific ways that people use the CRM?
Mhm.
So again, you have to spider out a little bit more and get strategic. And I think that's exciting for a team. I think about Shopify. I
Mhm.
think about a very large content operation like that, where they have been doing a high volume of content for a very long time. They, as we talked about in the first episode, are already doing very well within Google search results for pages 1 through, results 1 through 3. So they're updating a lot of content, but they also have more opportunity to now expand into new areas. So talking about new offerings around their product, and
Yeah.
the product is always changing. And that's another piece that I think is so exciting about software, is that AI is here. Everything is evolving very quickly. A lot of companies are integrating AI now. So there's all this new content that needs to be built out to fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
So that's another piece. And then also thinking about strategically about how do we build the reputation layer, which is a little bit more in your bucket. But how are we working with influencers in our space who can validate these things that we're writing about?
Mhm.
How can we be involved in, like, how can our employees be on LinkedIn talking about the product and answering questions? And again, that's more your bucket, but it's all part of this strategy. So I think that that's kind of the zoomed out place to start from. And I want to get a little bit more in the weeds on how LLMs retrieve information and how that factors into this conversation. But any other questions based on
I mean, so like I don't want to get super tactical.
Yeah.
But like have the best practices changed? Like cuz I know that, like if you're going to create a content brief for your writers or something, like there was always this like list of best practices of like need to incorporate, I mean, EEAT or whatever. Like is that still the framework that we're operating under for quality content, or has that evolved at all? Like, are we still on that EAT?
Yeah,
train?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely still on it. And I think, again, a lot of the best practices from SEO carry over. So
Right.
it's not SEO or it's just SEO. SEO best practices are still very much part of this. And I'll also say I see a lot of overlap with journalism and editorial lensing essentially on content. So when you think about how LLMs retrieve information, they are looking for answers to questions, but it's parsing out information that's been structured in a very easy to scan way. So again, this is kind of a best practice from SEO. You want to think of the inverted pyramid if you think about journalism, where the answer to the question is at the top, and if nobody gets further than that first paragraph, they've essentially got the answers to the question. So these models that are basically evaluating all the different sources out there and picking a winner are thinking about this and reading and scanning the content, ingesting it in the same way that a human would. So it's a lot of the best practices of
that makes sense.
Use your headings to this is the question, here's the answer. Next heading here, like this is a question, here's the answer. And so thinking about it that way, I think, is a nice way to It's a lot of carryover.
It's a lot of carryover.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One like very small example that I found and thought was really interesting, just anecdotally, was I I feel like with the AI engines, newer content can get surfaced very quickly. Like, because I feel like used to, you wrote a new blog, maybe 24 hours later, you would see it pop up somewhere in search, but it took a minute to like get indexed to
Yes,
get
the indexing of it all.
yeah. But I did like a very small little exercise recently where I asked ChatGPT who is Krista Doyle
I
because I
love that
wanted
one.
to see. I had never done
It's
that.
fun.
I wanted to see what it said about me and if it was accurate. And one of the sources it cited was Superpath's blog recap of my Reddit AMA. And it was like 9 hours after it had been
Wow.
published, which is like very fast, I feel like.
So fast.
So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I feel like
Yeah.
new content like can be surfaced very quickly if
Yeah.
it's done well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially something very tactical and useful like that. It's exactly the kind of thing that an LLM is looking for. I think, again, this also reinforces the idea that there's so much opportunity for people who are brand new to this work and who are just getting started. And I think for the companies that have been around for a long time, again, there's a lot of opportunity for updating and refreshing and again, just making some small strategic tweaks that will help these LLMs get what they need. So a very easy one is FAQs at the bottom of an article. And again, this is an opportunity for brands to talk to their GD customers. Please talk to your customers and find out the language that they're using and then mirror it back. This is copywriting 101. So FAQs are a great place to do that. And again, we're thinking about queries. So what are the questions people are asking? And then how can we give a succinct, tight answer to that? And FAQs are great for that. So that's been a lot of work that I've been doing, honestly, is going back, doing updates on existing content, and then making a few small tweaks so that it's more optimized for the LLMs. And the results of that are quick. Are quick because, too, it's surfacing as new content. It's got a new publish date. So this is a really low-hanging fruit that I hope more companies are doing. I get that it's a resource question and you have to have people and budget to do all of that, but that's a great place to start. Just go back and make some small strategic edits to your existing content that's already performing well.
I do have a question about the AI of it all. So obviously there's a lot of there's for the past few years, there's been a lot of discourse about human writers versus using AI to write, the AI slop of it all and everything sounding like ChatGPT with the hyphens and so I'm just curious, like, what is your mindset as a content person on using AI to write?
I think if you're not doing it, you should start now. And here's my thing. Even as a journalist who has been put out of work essentially by AI, I wrote for Forbes for 7 years and then AI came along and all the contributors got cut. I get it. It's business. It's not personal. But AI is here. It exists. It's not going back in the box. And it's very useful if you take the time to learn how to use it. What I'll say is a tool like Claude, if you learn how to prompt strategically and take the time to understand how do I use this and not just type in a question and get an answer, but really detailed prompting, there's a lot of opportunity there. Then there's super advanced layers you can add to this. You can really scale up content production using a tool like AirOps, where you can build full workflows and really scale up content production. What I'll say about all of that is AI will scale whatever you're giving it. So the quality of input, the quality of prompt, the quality of data that you're feeding it, the brand kit, the voice and tone guidelines, all of this stuff, this foundational groundwork, start there because you don't want to scale crap. You don't want it to, yes, these tools are great, but if the inputs are not good and not constantly updated, so as your product changes, as your cohorts of customers evolve over time and you get new use cases and new types of customers or new functionalities with your tool, if you're a software company, those assets have to be continually updated. And again, I think this is a case for there's a new role that's going to emerge where it's a person who's overseeing content operations. So less execution, more strategic partner in how do we scale and use AI to our advantage without it being slop.
And I think this is really interesting opportunity too, because I know that companies with massive teams, like massive companies, they have people fully dedicated to content refreshing.
Yeah.
All like that is their whole job.
Mhm.
But with AI, I think like even smaller teams can start to do this. Even
Yeah.
smaller teams can start to like either have like contract help to help them do this all year, because AI just sort of lowers that barrier to entry on that piece of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be totally candid and say that when AI first rolled out, I spoke at Columbia Journalism School to the graduate program there 2.5 years ago. And it was a room full of students who were like, is AI going to take our job? Should we be scared of this? And I remember at the time saying, no, like, you guys, this is your craft. It can't interview. It can't do any of those things. That's still true. But AI, we have to learn to use it. We have to lean into it. And so I think, again, just getting some education around how do we do this well, and what are the best practices, and how do we lean into our human strengths? So interviewing, new research, employee advocacy, having people from the team be on LinkedIn talking about what's happening at the company, building the brand sentiment across these different channels. This is all working towards LLMs, again, are thinking like a human being, and they're evaluating all this when they come up with an answer. So it's AI forward, but it's also very human forward, because the systems thinking that these tools use is the same things that we use to make a decision.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a few things I wanted to call out about content and AI, and having a good documentation around brand voice, I think is an important thing I wanted to touch on. I think a lot of companies think they have a brand voice, but they don't. But they don't.
Say more.
What I mean is, if you're using AI to scale content for this owned piece, you really need to have a lot of context and examples. Do this, don't do that when it comes to brand voice. And so when it comes to tools that help people scale content production, we see a lot of, in this fast-paced world.
Oh, yes.
It's everywhere. There are these dead giveaways. And so really having a honed-in voice around, this is how we sound, this is the language that our customers use. Again, do your research, talk to your customers, have focus groups, look at your testimonials, integrate all of that in. And again, I think it can be a help, and I don't think we need to be scared of it. I think my own hesitation, I've had to put it aside and just get super curious about all of it, because it is really useful.
Yeah.
I use Claude every single day.
Oh, yeah.
And the outputs, even for my own personal newsletter, the brand voice thing, I have a lot of documentation around it. The V1s it spits out are so good.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
It's like a ghost in the machine.
It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
It's a little scary.
It's a little scary.
But it's helpful.
Wildly helpful.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
So I think there, again, are just some opportunities. I think recency signals are a big thing too. So again, we talked about updating content. Sometimes people get a little stoppy-starty when it comes to content creation. They will do a content calendar, but the wheels will fall off. I think this is more for smaller companies, or they get intimidated about AI search. We're too late. I think just consistency.
Oh, yeah.
It's always looking at what's the last 12 months, or what have you put out in the last 6 months? And is the engine constantly putting out new content? So consistency is really important.
Yeah.
And I think it's a mindset shift too. So there's a lot of education that has to happen with leadership into this conversation about brand building and reputation engineering. So like we talked about a little briefly in that first episode, is SEO used to be this own content space where you could do these quick wins and the numbers were great, and you could point to the blog post that resulted in X amount of dollars in revenue.
Yeah.
This isn't that. Clicks are down. People aren't clicking. And so it's a much longer game, and it's a tougher sell for content leaders.
And not to mention, like, attribution for content marketers, while yes, sometimes you could point to a blog and be like, there were X many conversions. But I feel like as a whole, attribution is something that content has always struggled with anyway.
Yes.
So now adding in like the fact that measurement and tracking with AEO is so murky and weird, and it's always changing, and like sometimes you'll show up for certain queries and other times you won't.
Yeah.
Like, it's just always changing. So I just feel like the attribution of it all, too, is like, it does make it a tougher sell.
It's a much tougher sell. And I think, again, this is a case for having a point person who can educate leadership on, again, the larger picture here and what you're solving for and how this is a longer, larger play. And they have to be open to it, too. So I know that that's also difficult. But again, I think there's a lot of opportunities. Things like, I've been saying this for years, but more companies need to put out original data. Talk to your customers, conduct surveys, put out research, build topical expertise at a level that maybe you haven't before. It might be more expensive, but it also might just be a matter of an email survey. There are lots of ways you can scale this up or down or, make it fancy and expensive or do it on a shoestring budget. So I think that's a big one too, is again, you put out data. This is SEO 101. It gets a lot of backlinks. People want to link to it. You can actually find the original source for the data. You're not tracking down the rabbit hole of where did this come from? And is it even
like
true?
10 years ago or whatever?
Or does it exist at all? So I think there's just so much opportunity here for brands to own their topic. Really figure out what your topic is and then figure out how are we going to build not just pillar pages around specific keywords, but deep authority and expertise around the customers you serve, the questions they have, and the problems you can solve. And that to me is a mindset shift away from, again, clicks and performance data. It's way more difficult to report on. But I think, especially with AI summaries, I referenced this in the first episode, for people who are at the bottom of the sales funnel and are ready to kind of convert and make that purchase, these AI summaries are great for that. And so comparison posts and things like just this tool versus that tool. You know, there's so much opportunity, especially for software. And that's kind of the water I've been swimming in the last 10 years. There's just easy wins that are right there. So close. Any other questions about all this? I feel like I get excited about the topics and then I ramble. I don't know that I've given anything super tactical, but I also don't know that that's super interesting.
No. All this information has been great. Like I said, I was coming into this episode very a little blind, honestly, just because I haven't dabbled on this side of things. Though I will say it is interesting going into our next episode, there seems to be a little bit of overlap because you've talked about things like employee advocacy on LinkedIn and you've talked about the reputation layer of things, which I consider all of that off page.
Right. And it is.
And so I think it's this interesting way of looking at it though, where owned versus on page, I think are almost two different things. So it really does depend on, I think, how your team defines it and how they look at it. Because I think owned, you could kind of consider your LinkedIn pages your owned content.
That's true.
Or
it's great.
Your YouTube channel, your owned content because you own that channel. But it is at the same time off page.
Yes.
So it's very interesting.
All braid together. They're all working together. Because here's the thing. You could have the best content in the world, own your topic, have everything right. But if no third-party sources are vouching for you and validating and feeding the reputation layer, you're missing a whole piece of the equation.
For sure.
So they have to collaborate. And that's what we talked about in the first episode.
I
think the other final thing to say about all of this is it's very black boxy still. We do not know as a science how things get sourced. There is no formula to make this happen.
No.
Every LLM is different too. So Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, they all use different methodologies. And they are behind the curtain.
And none of them have come out yet to be here's sort of our guide and best practices for you to follow. SEOs, we've had the benefit of that from Google for a very long time. Actual people at Google whose jobs are to educate SEOs on how on the algorithm, provide consistent updates about algorithm changes. We don't have that yet.
We don't have that. And again,
OpenAI or Anthropic or whoever.
For this new person, this new role that's owning this work, That's a challenging thing because
Yeah.
leadership wants performance metrics that
Right.
indicate this is working
Yeah.
or it's not.
Yeah, and I think, again, like you were saying, it just takes the education of, like, I think the best case scenario right now is, like, we can like, I feel like as long as leadership understands that, which, like, most probably do because I feel like everybody is trying to educate themselves on this right
Yeah.
now. But as long as they understand that and as long as they are allowing and giving their teams permission to be, like, experimenting and
Yeah.
testing and, like, tracking, like, what is moving the needle and what's not, like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's, like, all you can really ask for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, again, curiosity is the right mindset to have. A
Mhm.
lot of experimentation, like you said. The landscape is moving so fast. Hardly anyone can keep up. So I would also say, like, be wary if anyone says, we have a science. We know how this works.
Oh,
We
correct.
can do it for
Yeah.
you. I would be much more apt to go on board with an agency or consulting partner or a freelancer, whoever you decide, who's like, you know what, I'm not sure, but let's reverse engineer as much as we can and solve for
Well,
what is
yeah,
working.
that's really the
for
only
what is working.
that's really the only
Because
way to do things.
there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah.
So be wary if people are like, we know how to do it. No, you don't.
Right.
Every engine's different. We
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what to do.
Yeah.
That's the other final note that I'll say about this is in this research that you're doing to better understand your customers and how they're using AI is you need to kind of figure out what's their engine of choice. So should you be kind of optimizing for what
That's a really good point. Yeah.
ChatGPT surfaces, or are they more Claude users, or
Yeah.
are they using some other LLM to surface
Yeah.
queries? You can't please all of the gods. You have to kind of pick
Yeah.
a lane. Or if
Right.
you're looking at signals across different engines, look for patterns and trends, of course.
I think that's a super interesting call out
Yeah.
of, like, looking for patterns that are emerging from different AI engines.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's like,
It's different.
what like, do B2B buyers over-index on one of these or the
Right.
other? I don't know. I've never even really thought about
Yeah.
that before.
And again, that's a great way.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity to conduct some research or reach out to your customers and have a conversation.
Yeah.
You're going to get that language
Yeah.
that you can then get the transcript from the call,
Yep.
find the common phrases, start integrating
Yep.
that into your product messaging, but
Yeah.
also your owned content.
Even, like, in different in, like, onboarding or purchase flow or whatever,
Absolutely.
like, the attribution form of, like,
How'd
where
you hear
did
about
you
us?
find I
Mhm.
know a lot of people have been doing that, which is super
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
So yeah, do customer research, talk to your people, do not guess. For years, people have been so bad about, we know our customers. And it's like, have you talked to your customers? And they're like, well, not in a while.
Yeah.
You probably need to talk to them. So
Yeah.
lots of opportunity.
Now more than ever.
Now, and there's never been a better time to start
Yeah.
getting on the phone with them or, meeting them where they are, which
Yeah.
kind of tees up nicely where we're going next. But yeah.
Yes. So next we will be digging more into the off-page space of things, which I'm excited to talk about because I don't think I realized, like, you would have had some overlappy stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get into that, and we will talk about that next time. But yeah, while we wrap up, find us on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Reach out anytime. I'm always excited to talk about this stuff with people on LinkedIn.
Send us questions. We need
Yeah.
questions.
Yes. Send us questions. DM us questions. We will have an email at some point, but we do not currently.
We're all learning together.
But yes, send us questions. We want to know, like, what you're curious about, what you've been seeing, any hot takes you might have. I'm always up for a good hot take.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we will see you next time.
Yeah. Stay
Bye.
curious. Bye-bye.